The elegant waltz playing in the gold-leafed Grand Bellagio Hotel ballroom was suddenly shattered by the sharp sound of breaking glass. A glass of red wine had just slipped from someone's hand, not by accident, but thrown deliberately at a woman sitting quietly near the window. "Oh, sorry, I thought you were the waitress." Then came a chilling laugh, spreading across the banquet tables like poisonous smoke. The woman wore a simple grey dress, with no flashy brand, no diamonds, and no bodyguards. In a room full of flaunted beauty and power, she appeared like a visual mistake. Red wine spread across the fabric, and crystal light reflected off the shattered glass at her feet. The entire room seemed to freeze for a second, just to see what she would do. Would she cry, run away, or beg? But she did none of that. She simply stood up, slowly brushed the wine off the hem of her dress, and lifted her head. Her eyes showed no embarrassment, no anger, no hatred. Only a gaze cold as steel, the look of someone long accustomed to being dismissed, who had learned to make the world pay with silence. No one knew. In just a few minutes, the host would take the mic and invite her to the stage as the main sponsor of this $18 million gala. At that moment, every laugh from tonight would become a permanent stain on their legacy. But for now, she still stood there, a shadow, beneath the glitter. And they still didn't know they had just humiliated the wrong woman. They didn't know that the woman was Sienna Calderone, the sole heir to a $42 billion financial empire, daughter of Lorenzo Calderone, the man who once made all of Wall Street bow when he walked into a room. But what they absolutely didn't know was this: she had given it all up, not because she was weak, but because she refused to become one of them. Those who wear tailored suits but have hollow souls, those who kneel before power but are quick to step on anyone whose name isn't loud enough. At 23, during her father's funeral, she sat silently in the back row. No one noticed her, because everyone was too busy greeting high-ranking officials walking across the red carpet. That night, she quietly packed away her father's portrait, folded the handkerchief he once used, and whispered, "If everything you left behind only makes people this fake and spineless, then I'll rewrite it my way." And then she vanished. She founded the ARC initiative with her own hands, without a single headline. She never used the Calderon name. She never appeared on any list of young women in power. For the past 5 years, she was the one spoon-feeding orphans at midnight, the one standing in the rain, handing a blanket to an old woman on the sidewalk, the one who paid tuition for over 300 children, always signing as a friend you don't know. To her, fame was nothing more than a mask not worth wearing. And today, she did not come back for the spotlight. She came only to uncover one truth: when no one knows who you are, how will they treat you? And then they spilled wine on her dress. Do you feel your chest tightening? Because even the woman who walked away from the throne could not escape the humiliation inflicted by those who believe they sit atop society. But don't worry, she didn't come to ask for justice. She came to deliver it in a way they would never expect. Mrs. Clarissa Hawthorne stepped onto the stage in jeweled stilettos, her face glowing with pride, holding her champagne glass high as if she were queen of the grandest charity gala of the year. The spotlight bathed her in gold, highlighting her glittering sequin gown, her perfectly coiled updo, and the smile she had practiced in the mirror for an entire week. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began in a voice sweet as syrup, but sharp as a blade. "Today we gather here to honor a very special individual, the one who quietly sponsored this magnificent event." The ballroom fell utterly silent. Everyone waited to hear the name of a famous CEO, a rising tycoon, or a humanitarian Hollywood star. Clarissa glanced down at the paper she herself had signed, and then her eyes froze. Her lips trembled. Beads of sweat formed at her temple, because the name printed there in bold capital letters was Sienna Calderon. A silent quake surged through her chest. Just moments ago, she and her friends had humiliated, drenched, and mocked that very woman, calling her a freeloader, a misfit among the elite. Clarissa looked around, desperate for an escape. But it was too late. The MC had already taken the mic. Please rise to welcome the woman who fully funded tonight's event, a symbol of quiet compassion, and the founding CEO of the ARC initiative, Miss Sienna Calderon. The room went still. Chairs pushed back, eyes widened. The same mouths that once sneered now hung open in disbelief, and there was Sienna still standing by the window, calmly walking toward the stage. The red wine stain still bloomed across her dress, but her head was held high, her steps a steady, and her eyes were blazing like a fire no one could extinguish. Sienna stood at the microphone. She didn't fix her hair. She didn't wipe away the wine stains still blooming across her dress. She didn't need to, because her very presence there was already a slap across the face of everyone in that room. Her voice rang out, not loud, not sharp. Just the kind of voice you never forget, even long after the night has ended and the lights have gone out. I don't need applause. I don't need an apology. I only have one question, and I hope each of you will answer it for yourselves. She took a single step forward, the light casting her face in calm, chilling clarity. When I walked into this room, no one asked my name. No one asked why I came. Everyone just looked at my dress, not branded enough, my purse, not expensive enough, and decided I wasn't worthy to share a table. A bitter laugh brushed her lips. Funny. This is a gala for compassion, isn't it? Then why does compassion have a dress code? The room stirred. Some bowed their heads. Some shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. But she stood firm, every word striking the marble floor like a nail driven deep. If tonight I had truly been someone with nothing, no title, no Calderon name, nothing but a heart and a pair of eyes, would you have treated me any differently? Or would you still have poured wine on me and told me I didn't belong? No one answered, but everyone knew they had been stripped bare. I didn't come here to be seen. I came to see you as you are when no one tells you who I am. She lifted her chin, and what I saw was a room full of people talking about charity, yet not one of you knew how to bow before real kindness when it didn't wear a label. Then she bowed her head slightly, not out of submission, but as a final farewell to illusion. Don't call it kindness. If it disappears just because the person in front of you doesn't fit your aesthetic. She stepped off the stage quietly. No background music, no effects, only the thunder of chairs pushing back behind her. Because now, no one had the courage to sit while a woman like her was still walking. The stage lights beamed directly onto the far right table, where a woman in a wine-stained dress still sat silently, and the MC's voice rang out with clarity, each syllable striking like a blow to the hearts of those who had just been laughing minutes earlier. Please welcome tonight's honorary sponsor founder of the ARC initiative, Miss Sienna Calderon. A glass clinked and fell to the marble floor. No one laughed anymore. Clarissa froze, lips pressed tight, eyes darting in a panic she could no longer disguise. No one stood. No one dared move. But Sienna stood. She rose as if it had all been preordained. No outburst, no glance at anyone, especially not at Clarissa, the woman now trembling in her jewel-encrusted gown, stripped of all poise. Sienna walked past rows of chairs, past stairs, past layers of judgment, once hurled at her, and she said nothing because her stride toward the stage was already a statement: I do not need acceptance to have worth. As she stepped onto the podium, the screen behind her changed. The ARC Initiative logo appeared against soft music, followed by a stream of numbers. 25,000 children helped 200 full scholarships, 17 countries receiving medical food and educational aid. And the only name beneath it, Siena Calderon, founder and CEO. 1 second ago, they mocked her. 1 second later, the entire room stood frozen like stone. Clarissa nearly collapsed into her chair. Everyone understood this was not the final blow. This was only the prelude to a truth none of them, in this opulent hall, were ready to face. But Siena said nothing. She gave a single quiet nod into the microphone, like a judge delivering a verdict too absolute to need words. And then the room began to stir, not with noise, but with the sound of being silently, utterly exposed. The MC hadn't even finished thanking her when the LED screen behind Siena suddenly changed. No effects, no warning. Just a single, blazing red line scrolling across the display, detailed expenditures from ARC Initiative Partner Organizations Public Transparency Report 2025. It was as if the oxygen had been sucked from the room. A short video clip played. It showed Clarissa shaking hands with a major donor, someone who had once been investigated for charity fraud. Then came the emails. Internal messages opened one by one. Transfer $80,000 to the hidden account. Label it as event operation cost. Don't let Siena find out. Bottom right corner sender name, Clarissa Hawthorne. People began to rise from their seats. A few reporters lifted their cameras. Clarissa turned pale, trembling lips, unable to form words. She looked around for an exit, but every gaze in the room was locked on her sharp as blades. Siena still said nothing. She simply pressed pause, then turned toward Clarissa, her eyes void of hatred, only a cold, devastating disappointment. I used to think silence was the kindest response. She spoke calmly. But kindness toward a traitor is another betrayal to those you're trying to protect. No applause, no mocking laughter. Just the quiet way everyone who once bowed to Clarissa now turned their backs on her as if she were contagious. An auditing official stepped forward, whispering something to the event organizers. And then, in full view of everyone, Clarissa was asked to step down from the stage. No one took a picture. No one said goodbye. No one felt sorry. Because everyone understood. The storm she summoned to drown someone else had finally swept her away. The very next morning, Siena Calderon's name covered every front page. The woman who taught the elite a lesson in dignity. Hidden CEO exposes fake queen in the middle of charity gala. Dozens of news stations lined up outside the ARC Initiative's headquarters, each begging for an exclusive interview. But every single one received the same response. Thank you, but no. No cameras, no lights, no spotlight. Because to Siena, the point was never about being celebrated, it was about making sure no one who had ever been looked down on would ever have to stay silent again. She didn't appear on any broadcast. She declined every offer from fashion magazines and business forums. Instead, she sent out a single press release, just a few lines long. I don't speak on behalf of anyone. I simply did the right thing at a time when silence was no longer an option. And I hope from today on, more people will have the courage to do the same. And instead of taking a vacation or celebrating, Siena returned to the office, not to resume work, but to open a door. She launched a new program called Voice First, a platform where anyone who had ever been silenced in organizations, schools, or workplaces could submit anonymous reports protected directly by the ARC Initiative. No more being forced into silence. No more choosing between speaking out or losing everything. There were no glossy photos, no tearful speeches. Just a woman in a white shirt sitting in a meeting room, building the first transparent intake system in the world of philanthropy with her team by her side. And it was that very silence that echoed the loudest. That evening, when Sienna returned home, she didn't go straight to her office. Instead, she walked into the kitchen. On the wall beside the dining table still hung an old black and white photograph, her mother in a wrinkled dress holding a glass of water, standing quietly at the edge of a lavish party she would never forget. Sienna sat down, silently, not crying, but with eyes heavy with memories that never faded. She was 15 that year. The first time her mother brought her to an evening event for the Honorary Parents Fund at Clarendon Hall, the elite private academy. A 3-course dinner, white tablecloths, the soft sound of a grand piano in the corner. Her mother, Esperanza, worked as the school's janitor, but that night she came with her daughter, dressed neatly, wearing a smile full of hope. Until another mother, none other than Clarissa Hawthorne, lifted her glass, leaned slightly, and said, "Sienna is so lovely. But it's a pity your mother's dress doesn't quite match the tone of the evening, does it?" Soft laughter fluttered around the table like a cut with no blood. Esperanza smiled along, but her hands clenched so tightly her nails broke. Sienna saw it all. She didn't say anything that night, but in her heart, a quiet vow was born one day. I will make the world sit down and listen. Not because they're forced to, but because they can't ignore me anymore. For years after, Sienna never spoke of that night. But it was that single moment of humiliation that taught her the most valuable lesson. That silence is not always noble. That no one deserves to be dismissed just because they lack a fancy title or don't hold their cutlery the French way. And tonight, when Clarissa was exposed, when the room had no choice but to sit in silence and watch the woman once scorned rise like a flame, Sienna didn't feel triumphant. She only felt that she had kept her promise to her mother, even if it came nearly 20 years late. As the gala ended, people left with shimmering eyes, not from the wine or crystal chandeliers, but because they had witnessed something rare, the truth being honored without needing to be shouted. The press still waited in the lobby. Businessmen stepped forward to shake Sienna's hand. Invitations for partnerships, investments, and interviews came flooding in. But she didn't stop for any of them. She exited the building like a different woman, not proud, not distant, simply steady. Then she paused. At the side gate where staff entered and exited, a young woman, maybe 20, stood quietly beside the security fence. Simple dress, round glasses, clutching an invitation that had been crossed out in red ink. Sienna froze. She recognized that look, eyes full of silence, struggling to hold back tears. It was the same look she had worn at 15. A guard was telling the girl she wasn't allowed in. Her name's been removed from the list. The girl stammered an apology and started to turn away, but Sienna spoke. "She's my guest." The words made the guard fall silent. Sienna walked up, gently rested a hand on the girl's arm, and added, "They can strike your name from paper, but they can't strike you from what's right." She led the girl inside, walking past the very people who had just been praising her moments earlier. No one dared to stop her. No one dared to question her, because they understood. Sienna Calderon, once denied entry, was now the one opening the door for the next. Not with a promise, not with wealth, but with responsibility. She didn't look back. She simply smiled gently, as if passing the torch to another soul who had nearly been extinguished. And in that moment, on the glowing streets of New York, where status is measured by seats and surnames, one woman chose to rise for the one left out. And that was the loudest victory of all. No applause needed. That day, Clarissa Hawthorne vanished from every headline. No one spoke of her anymore as a symbol of charity or a social elite icon. But no one forgot the night Sienna Calderon walked onto the stage, not to seek revenge, but to redefine how people should treat one another. She didn't tear things down. She didn't raise her voice. She simply stood there with unwavering eyes and a calm voice, exposing hypocrisy without losing an ounce of her own grace. And if you think this sounds like a fairy tale, remember this. Sienna had once been mocked, erased, and forced to watch her mother be humiliated simply for not belonging to the right class. But instead of returning harm for harm, she chose to restore justice with kindness, placed exactly where it belonged. When she led that young woman through the same gates that had once slammed shut on her childhood, Sienna didn't say, "I won." She simply said, "Now it's your turn." And just like that, a quiet revolution began. Not with banners or chants, but with one right act at the right time. If you've stayed with us until now, then this isn't just Sienna's story. It could be yours. It could be mine. It could belong to anyone who's ever been laughed at, pushed aside, or labeled not enough. And you know what? Sienna was never extraordinary to begin with. She just chose not to stay silent when someone needed a voice. And that is true strength. This story reminded me of one thing. Kindness isn't a sign of weakness. It's a bold declaration. You don't have to be a CEO. You don't need wealth or power. All it takes is the courage to stand for what's right, especially when no one else is. And sometimes, a single act like that can change the fate of an entire generation. If this story touched your heart, if it made you want to live more kindly, love more fiercely, and never look down on anyone again, then leave your thoughts in the comments, share this video with someone who's ever felt voiceless, and don't forget to subscribe to Toch Story so you never miss another moving, inspiring journey. Because the world doesn't need more people with wealth, it needs more people brave enough to do what's kind.